Look at this cute little adorable table. In this video, I'm going to show you how to 3D print and paint it. Let's do it. Hi everybody, I am Danny the 3D Printing DM, and welcome to 3D Printing Tabletop, a channel where we talk about all things 3D printing for your tabletop games. One of my favorite things to print for my D&D games is scatter terrain, or a small piece of terrain that I can kind of put anywhere I want on any type of board. I love how flexible this type of terrain is because you can use it in pretty much any type of game system, and they're really quick to print and they're really fast to paint and generally pretty simple when you compare it to something like miniatures. This video is for beginners, and please know I consider myself something of an amateur, but I want to share my process and document it for the benefit of those of you who are newer than me and might be interested in doing this for yourself. If you do consider yourself an expert, either 3D printer or painter, please drop your wisdom in the comments below. I know that the community and myself will appreciate it very much. Let's do this. We start by finding our model. Often when I'm looking for terrain, the first place I always start is a website called Thingiverse. Now, all of the models on Thingiverse are free, and anyone can upload their own designs here. And as a result, Thingiverse has something of a reputation for having mixed quality models. But as far as sheer quantity of models go, in my opinion, it's by far the best place to go when you want to start looking for either a mini or a piece of terrain, especially when you don't need professional level sculpts. I almost always start by typing in 28mm and what I'm looking for. In this case, I'm using a round table since I actually have never printed one, and I want one for my D&D games. So you download it and you tip the designer if you appreciate their work. They really appreciate this. Once we've downloaded the model, we're going to import it into our slicer, Cura, and we're going to load our profile. In this case, I'm using my Ender 3 terrain profile, which is just a slightly modified stock profile, to be honest. It's nothing fancy, and it certainly isn't super tight. If you are interested anyways, you can find it in the description below. Now, something important about 3D printed terrain. Terrain usually doesn't require the same super small layer heights like minis do. In fact, it's often created and modeled with bigger layer lines and bigger layers in mind. You can check out the layer test video that I did so you can see kind of the difference between them and maybe some techniques if you want to print a little bit bigger, or if you want to take the time and print a little bit smaller to see the type of detail you'll get. To make these prints pretty quick, I'm printing them at 0.12mm layer height, and I'm putting them in an orientation that won't require any supports. I'm going to change to layer view so that I can make sure there aren't any holes in my model or anything like that. And then I'm going to save, print to my SD card, and let the printer do its magic. Now, you notice when I first tried to print this table, I tried to print several of them at the same time. And it really shouldn't have been difficult. This isn't a difficult print. But my printer just wasn't cooperating at the time. So I re-leveled it several times, I lowered the speed, and just nothing seemed to work. What did work for me was printing each part alone. And I'm still not sure why this happened or why I was getting this issue, but I found a quick fix that worked and I moved forward. Now that we've printed it, let's go to painting it. Now, like I mentioned, this table is super easy to paint. You're going to start by priming the pieces black. Even though I printed these pieces out in black PLA, I still primed them black because black PLA is generally shiny. And when you're looking at it and you have these black creases shining back at you, it just doesn't really look right if it's supposed to be a shadow. It's not supposed to be bouncing back at you. This is just my personal preference. Now, to paint this the way I did, all you need is a few shades of brown, a little gray, and a few metals, which are very cheap from your local craft store. To start, we're going to use this dark brown, and we're going to dry brush the whole thing. You're going to take some paint, and you're going to rub it off on the napkin or anything else that will hold paint well. And you're going to keep doing that until you can't see the brush putting down any more paint. And then you're going to run along the elevated parts of the terrain piece. And you want to make sure that none of the paint gets into the crevices, right? Those are your shadows. That dark brown is going to dry pretty quickly. So now you're just taking a medium brown and you're going to cover more of that dark brown still, dry brushing. And this is just a highlight, and it's really going to start lighting this up. Just don't go overboard at this stage because we still have one more brown highlight to do. And now we're going to take our light brown and just going to hit some of the tips in random parts, right? Just kind of changing the way you hold the brush, especially the areas around the black to highlight and bring out that contrast. Now, during all this painting, if you hit some of the metal, it's okay. The metal paint will overpower and go on top of the brown. And sometimes I like to make things pop, especially with wood. And in this case, I add a little bit of highlight of a little bit of a light gray. It's not quite as bright as white, but it's really gonna make the table stand out and have certain things kind of catch your eye and make it be a little bit more interesting. Makes it look a little bit older, in my opinion. Probably not the best if you want to draw people's eyes to anything else besides the table, but I kind of like it like this. That's just my personal preference. Now we're gonna go ahead and put some metal on here. This metal from Appleboro brand usually comes pretty thick, so if you thin it down, you're gonna need a lot more applications. That's normally the way to do things, but there's really no texture on the metal, so I just kind of put it on thick just to save time. And finally, I use a lighter metal to highlight some of those rivets popping out. And now that I got both parts painted, I finally want to glue this thing on. Super glue would work great here because it's a flat surface with lots of contact area. My preferred glue though for areas that are out of sight is this contact cement. So I dab it on there and I just push it on for a few seconds and it's done. Super glue takes longer normally until it's set. This is just as strong, if not stronger, and leaves more residue though. So I just wanted something really quick and dirty, so that's what I used. And now you have a table that you can fit to make any room just a little more interesting and lived in, like it's actually being used. If you like this model, you can find more of it by looking up Curufin on Thingiverse. Curufin is Ryan Biesecker from Heroes Horde, and he has a lot more small room decor pieces you can find on Thingiverse for free as well. And he's got more comprehensive, more detailed sets on Heroes Horde as well, if you are interested. I'll put links in the description below. So once again, if you have any tips or tricks you would like to share with the community, please feel free to leave a comment below. We'd love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you do differently or what your tips would be for this specific table. If you did enjoy this video, I'd love for you to subscribe and join more often. We'd love to have you here. Happy printing and happy gaming.